Now, when you're running one of the world's biggest user-driven internet communities, are you ever really in the driver's seat? Good question. Social networking news sites like Dig can bring up-to-the-minute, under-the-radar stories to millions of users worldwide. Dig specifically boasts of being completely user-generated with little moderator intervention. But last week, the suits had to step in. Dig announced it was removing user-submitted links to stories that revealed an HD DVD encryption key, and the users didn't take kindly. Thousands resubmitted and pushed stories to the front page, undermining Dig's attempts to remove the information. Many of the banned or disenchanted users simply fled to other social news sites and posted the stories there. Eventually, Dig founder Kevin Rose conceded and stated, quote, "You've made it clear. You'd rather see Dig go down fighting than bow down to a bigger company," end quote. Are Dig users fighting for internet freedom, or are they pushing the limits of legality? Dig this. It's The Loop. All right, my guest tonight, Wired News senior editor Dylan Tweney joins us, and Forbes.com digital download reporter David Ewalt. Gentlemen, welcome to The Loop. Let's get into this heated, yet I'm not sure if it's controversial issue. Well, let's get to it. Last week's event was a pivotal moment for social news networks and for user-generated content in general. David, it seems like the real controversy was over who controls Dig and the posts themselves. You know, is it the user's site, or is it the admins and the moderators? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple people who have called this Dig's Boston Tea Party, and I think that's a pretty decent comparison, because what this really is it's one of the first shots in a big battle over who controls what on the internet. I mean, what Dig just saw is that Dig does not control its own site. It's surrendered control to the users who run the site. There's a lot of people out there who want to launch sites like Dig. I mean, a lot of suits, a lot of guys at media companies, and now they're going to have to consider, if we do something social, are we still in charge of the site, or are we handing it over to the users?
Sure. Dylan, is this mass users dumping digital code off a dock into the ocean in protest?
Yeah, you know, I think the Boston Tea Party analogy is apt on one level, in that people just kind of got caught up in the moment, and they went off, and they just kind of went crazy. But I think where that analogy breaks down is that I don't think this is going to lead to any mass movement of Dig users who are going to go off and change the world and found a new country based on principles of internet freedom and freedom of speech. I think this is really much more of a let's have fun on Dig party rather than a major statement for freedom of speech.
I think there's truth to that, but also it's important to remember that Dig is a very young community. A lot of people in college or high school, and for a lot of people, this is their first kind of political statement they've ever made. So maybe this is something that does get them more involved and gets them engaged in these issues.
Now, yeah, I think I'd be if I saw any sign that the people were actually organizing around this and sort of going on to create an actual movement, I'd believe that. But I think really, when you come down to it, a lot of people were just having fun. I mean, they were making songs. They were, putting the code on church marquees. They were putting, photoshopping pictures of cats with the code. I mean, they were just totally running rampant.
This was more about palling around with your buddies like you would in any other forum, and not so much sticking it to Dig for free speech.
Yeah, it was like trying to top the other Dig users to see who could come up with the most outrageous, flagrant use of the hack.
Now, David, it's one thing for a site to give power to the users, and that's cool. But if the community causes said service to get sued out of existence, then what's the point, really?
Well, I think the community, when they look at a site like Dig, they say, what I like about this site is it has a voice that I agree with. This site is very pro-tech, it's anti-DRM, it's all these things that I sympathize, and this is what I want it to be. Mm-hmm. And the people involved in this said, if Dig stops being this, I don't care if Dig exists anymore. So Dig kind of has to stay the way they like it, or it's as good as dead.
Well, now, Dylan, in the past, and Kevin Rose said on Twit, hey, a zip file that points to Photoshop, that's bad. Remove that right away. We have from the start. So, I mean, they can't ever fully relinquish control to the community, right? They've always blocked the porn and the piracy and the stuff that I care to see on the homepage.
I mean, it's a tough thing because, when the user community rallies around something like this, Kevin Rose has basically no choice. The users told him loud and clear that they feel like they're in charge and they own Dig. And if he didn't accede to their demands, they were going to go somewhere else, right? They could always go to another site or just go away entirely. So, I think you can, if you're running a site like Dig, you can take down the obvious violations, but you are going to live in constant fear that somebody is going to make that a cause and start trying to repost it.
And David, how do you feel about Dig's response? Did Rose do the right thing? Was this a good move for the community?
Yeah, I think he did. I think it was something that satisfied the people who were genuinely interested in the political issue. It also recognized that if he pisses off the users, he doesn't have a company anymore.
True.
I mean, Dig has to be responsible. It has to be a responsible business and defend itself against lawsuits, but it also has to stay faithful to its users.
All right, well, let's forget Dig and free speech. Go ahead, Dylan. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so the flip side of that is that I did a search before coming in here, and Dig now has, I think, 57,000 instances of this code spread across its servers. So, each one of those could cost Dig as much as $2,000. So that's like $100 million of liability, potentially, if they decide to go after it. I mean, that's huge.
And normally you might ask for some of that publicity. You might be willing to pay for it, but I'm not sure that this particular case is going to attract any new users. I think it's playing to the same crowd that's already visiting and already using Dig. But
exactly.
We're running out of time. I got to get to a final word here, and I'll start with you, Dylan, because Rupert Murdoch, he just joined this social news game with MySpace News. I mean, if he's watching, he's seeing what's happening with this site, what should he take away from this experience?
If I were Rupert Murdoch, I'd be living in fear of a similar rebellion amongst MySpace users.
You think they're going to refuse to take more three-quarter perspectives in the bathroom mirror? I don't think a revolt there could be as interesting. David, what do you think? Rupert's watching. Should he freak out? Should he put steps in place to stop this from happening on MySpace?
Yeah, Rupert's going to have to learn that in order for social news to be successful, you have to surrender a lot of control. And we're talking about a guy who's basically a Bond villain, so surrendering control doesn't come easy to this guy.
I think that's a loop topic for another day, what kind of Bond villain is Mr. Murdoch. But for right now, I'm going to thank Dylan and David. Thank you guys for joining us and keeping us in the loop.
Thank you.
Listen, when you have a site that depends on a vocal and active user base, you always have to perform a bit of a balancing act. You have to allow your community to use the site the way they want while still running a business and ultimately protecting the bottom line. So if your users are breaking the law, you're going to get shut down. And while nothing bad has happened yet, we'll see what goes down when a forum starts buzzing in the ear of a more lawsuit-happy consortium. Because we all know that the RIAA, they're not going to play nice with the net, are they? No.
Attack of the Show, weeknights at 7, only on G4.